Hi everyone, and welcome to another video in my 2021 TBR series. In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you all of the contemporary and romance books that I hope to get to in 2021. I thought I would combine these genres into one video since a lot of them kind of go hand in hand, although there is one book on this list that is historical romance, and there are a couple of books that I would consider to be more contemporary with romance as a subgenre. Nonetheless, as per usual, I have 10 books to show you. They're all written down on my phone, so if you see me reading off my phone or looking down, that is why. So, jumping into the first book on my list, this is Chasing Lucky by Jen Bennett. I have read 3 other Jen Bennett books, and I have absolutely loved every single one of them, so I believe this is her newest release, and I'm very excited to finally pick it up this year. So, in this book, we follow our main character called Josie, and she is returning to her hometown, and she has a run-in with her former best friend called Lucky, and I think he's kind of a bit of a bad boy now, and he makes it very clear to Josie that he doesn't really want anything to do with her, until one day at a pool party Josie finds herself in a bit of trouble and Lucky takes the fall for her and she doesn't really know why, and then I think a romance ensues. It sounds super duper cute, and like I said, I loved all of Jen Bennett's other books, so I'm really excited to pick this one up. Next, we have a book called Meg and Joe, and this is a modern retelling of Little Women. If you watched my channel at all towards the end of 2020, then you might know that I'm kind of obsessed with Little Women, both the movie and the book, and basically just all of the characters in general, so I'm very happy to read any kind of Little Women literature at this point. So this is a modern retelling of the story. I believe it mainly follows Meg and Joe, according to the title, and while it is a retelling, I think it does kind of take their story in a different direction than specifically following the way that the book goes. But either way, I'm really excited to read this, and I'm pretty sure the author is writing or already wrote a sequel that follows Beth and Amy is my favorite of the March sisters, so I'm really excited to read this one and then hopefully like it enough to want to pick up the sequel. Next up, we have a book called One Day in December, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what this book is about, except that one day I heard somebody say that it will make you cry, and I am not a crier when it comes to books, so anytime I hear that a book will make me cry, I'm always like, challenge accepted. Will this be the book that finally gets my emotions to come out? So yeah, I'm excited to pick this up. I know I read the synopsis at one point and it sounded cute. Like, I'm not only reading this book because I want to see if it will actually make me cry, but I do actually think I'm gonna enjoy it, and I'm saving it for a day in December because, you know, just strikes me as a December kind of book. Next on my list, we have Beach Read. If you've been watching BookTube recently, you've probably heard about this book because it's been pretty popular on BookTube. In this, we're following 2 writers. The guy, he writes literary fiction, and then the girl writes romance books, and they're both staying in neighboring beach houses on vacation, and they're also both suffering from writer's block. So I guess to try and kind of get out of that, they decide to set a little challenge of switching genres. So the girl has to write literary fiction and the guy has to write romance, and I assume a romance ensues. I've heard really good things about this book, so I'm pretty excited to give it a read, and I love reading books about books and writers and people writing books and all of that jazz, so it sounds like a really good time. Next up, we have that historical romance that I mentioned earlier, and that is The Duke and I. Again, you've probably heard quite a bit about this book on BookTube lately because it is the first book in the Bridgerton series, which was recently adapted by Netflix, and everybody is obsessed with it, including myself. So as soon as I finished that series, because the season went by way too quickly, I totally needed more of the Bridgerton siblings, so I requested the book from the library, and everybody apparently has the same idea, so I'm like the 27th person in line to get this book, so I got my fingers crossed that I get it like before the end of the year, frankly, because apparently everybody wants to read this right now, and I don't blame them. Although I have heard garbage things about this book. I'm gonna be completely honest, a lot of people hate this book, a lot of people really like it, so I don't know where I'm gonna land. I just know that I want to spend more time with the Bridgerton siblings, and I can't wait until season 2 of Bridgerton comes out, so hopefully I will get the fix that I want off of this book. The next book on my list is called Forbidden, and this is a book that I'm a bit nervous to tell you a synopsis for. Basically, I believe we're following 2 older teenagers, and they fall into a bit of a romantic relationship due to unfortunate circumstances that they find themselves in, but the relationship is very much forbidden due to the fact that they are brother and sister. So let me give you a bit more context. I believe we're following the 2 oldest siblings in a family. I want to say that their dad isn't in the picture and their mom is kind of absent. I think she might be dealing with some alcohol or drug abuse, so she's not really there, and these 2 older siblings kind of have to take on the parental role of like mom and dad for their younger siblings, and due to the fact that they have to like grow up so fast and they take on these roles and responsibilities, they just find themselves in this relationship. And yeah, I've heard really good things about this book, which is why I really want to pick it up. I've heard that it makes you question everything that you thought about incest relationships. So I'm really interested to see what this book does with the whole situation. I don't know if I'm going to get around to getting it though, because I can't seem to get my hands on a copy. For some reason, there is no library in my county, and there's a lot of libraries in my county, so I don't know how none of them have a copy of this book. Like, it's just not in the library system. And I just don't know if I can bring myself to outright buy a new copy of this book, because while so many people do really like it and give it like 5 out of 5 stars, at the same time I can definitely see how this book could not be a favorite read of mine and one that I would want to hold a copy of on my shelves. So I just don't know if I can bring myself to go out and buy a copy of this book. So I hope to read it sometime this year, but it really depends on if I can get my hands on a copy or not. The next book on my list is called Bad Romance by Heather Demetrios. I actually just got this book from my library and I hope to pick it up next. So in this book we follow a main character called Grace, and I believe her parents, or more specifically her stepfather and her mom, are pretty abusive towards her, and then she ends up finding herself in a romantic relationship with a guy at her school, and he also ends up being abusive. So overall, this seems to just be a story about abusive relationships. Suddenly this video took a turn from some very lighthearted romances to some very dark stuff. But yeah, I've been drawn to read these kinds of books lately. I think a book that I read quite similar to this was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. That was also about abusive relationships, and I really liked that book. I felt like it was really important, and I hope that this book does the same thing. And like I said, I just got it from my library, so I'm hoping to pick it up really soon, and then you can hear about my thoughts on it in my February wrap-up. The next book on my list is called The Two Lives of Lydia Bird. I believe this is written by the same author who wrote One Day in December, although this book, I have a little bit more of an idea of what it's actually about. So we follow our main character called Lydia, and her and Freddie, who is her boyfriend, husband, partner, not 100% sure, have been together for over a decade until one day when Freddie tragically dies. So I think that's in the synopsis, and I didn't just spoil this for you, but that's all I really know about it, except that there is some kind of magical realism element in which Lydia is living in reality in which Freddie is dead and she's having to deal with that, but then somehow also she's living in this kind of alternative reality that isn't reality. I think it's just like a dream-like magical state in which he is still alive, and I think she kind of has to choose as to whether she wants to kind of accept reality where he's dead and she has to move on, or if she wants to live in this other world that isn't really real but he is still alive there. So once again, sounds like a very tearjerker kind of story, so hopefully I will enjoy it, and maybe this will be the book that makes me cry. Next up on my list, we have the only book that I actually own, and that is Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. So in this book, we're following our 2 main characters called Pepper and Jack, and both of their families own burger restaurants, and then one day, one of the families steals a recipe, supposedly, from the other family, and it starts this Twitter war between the 2 through their, like, family's restaurant Twitter accounts. But then at the same time that these two are fighting it out on Twitter, they're also falling for each other on this anonymous chat app. This sounds very similar to some other contemporary romance books that I have read, and I've really loved this trope in almost all of the ones that I've picked up, including, we were just talking about Jen Bennett earlier. She has a book kind of similar with this sort of trope in it, and I really liked it. So hopefully I'll really like the way that it is done in this book also. And then the final book on my list is of no surprise. It is a Casey West book called Sunkist. This comes out on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. What a day to release a book. All I really know about this book is we're following our main character called Avery, and her parents have dragged her out into the middle of a woods at a campground, and she finds love there is what I'm gonna assume happens. Like I said, really enjoy Casey West books. I'm definitely kind of growing out of them, but at the same time, I think her writing is so much fun, and I just have a really good time reading her books, even though they're not like the deepest things ever. So I've read every single book that Casey West has put out, and I'm not about to stop. So I'm very excited to pick this one up, and hopefully I will still really enjoy it. So those are the top 10 books on my contemporary romance TBR list. If you have read any of these books, leave me a comment down below and let me know which ones you think that I should prioritize. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!